Welcome to the Wordy Podcast, your go-to hub for all things writing, world building, and the occasional dive into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We're breaking down the barriers between you and your next great story. Whether you're a seasoned scribe or just scribbling your first sentences, we've got something for you. We'll be discussing everything from crafting compelling characters to dissecting the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre in the world of fiction. Okay, this script says you guys are eccentric. Isn't that just a 3-syllable word for weird? No offense. So, whether you're in need of inspiration, a good laugh, or just a couple of weirdos to keep you company on your writing journey, you're in the right place. Thanks for tuning in to the Wordy Pair Podcast.
All right, welcome to the Wordy Pair Podcast. I am Rudy.
And Justin.
And we are talking today, to start, about tools for writing and why you shouldn't spend money on tools for writing. Kind of.
We are flying off the seat of our pants on this one because we just came up with this topic like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
We have a whole list of topics. And we were like, what should we talk about? And I said, I'll go look at writer's Twitter. And I looked at writer's Twitter and someone said something about what tools do you absolutely need as a writer? And this prompted this talk.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things where we have a bunch of topics written down, but they all require research, and we didn't do any research.
And so I'm going to use this to make a point that inspiration can come from anywhere.
Even Twitter.
Yes, even Twitter.
You would never think it could come from Twitter.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're on Twitter, you could never think, so... Remember when the internet was fun?
Yeah, back when there was more than 4 websites?
Yeah. I'd heard the term dead internet theory before. I didn't know it was actually like a big thing that like was a big conspiracy theory people had.
Yeah.
So I went down that rabbit hole the other day, and I was just like, this is going too deep on this subject. The reality is we know that everyone's just on Twitter at this point. It's like Twitter and Google, and everything's just a search engine and a social media website.
Basically.
But there's kind of this funnel of technology where everything gets boiled down to these things that everyone ends up using, and a lot of the imagination seems to disappear. And one of those instances that we can look at is software that people use for, writing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the obvious... Okay, so the basic... Let's go full basic. Pen and paper. Even
yes,
pencil and paper. You can write things that way still. But if you're going to get it published somewhere, you're going to need to digitize it somehow. Right?
Yeah.
This isn't, back in the day, you could have a handwritten manuscript and give it to an editor, and editors were able to translate that stuff into type for you. For if you were a famous writer, generally speaking, already, we have the humble typewriter, upon which
nobody's really using. I think there's like a handful of people that like write on typewriters just to say
there's no one
write
using
on typewriters
anymore.
No, there's
people that do it
still like
for hipster reasons, but those aren't real writers.
But there are people who will write books, but they'll write like they'll do calligraphic writing, and they'll do it in like a sketch pad or something. Even then, they're scanning in the books and reproducing it digitally at some point in the modern era. So basically, everything is digital. So
yeah, I guess technically you could do that with a scanner. I haven't seen any books like that, but they probably exist.
It's been done. They've been doing that since scanners were a thing, and I think there's some people that just they like the idea of having a book that has a bit of a fancier
human
look
touch
to it. Yeah,
sure.
But the thing is, nowadays you can get software that can mimic that. You can have stylized
it never looks
writing.
Quite that right.
It never does.
There's something personal about your own handwriting that makes it more interesting.
Yeah, and it's a great way to do a children's book. To just scribble a page out on like really bright background white paper, so it translates well once you put it into a digital format.
Sure.
But really, we're beyond the pen and paper stage if you're talking about the basic tools for writing. There's not too many writers around the world who are working at pen and paper level anymore, so we're talking word processors, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk word processors. And a lot of people seem to be intent on spending money on a word processor, and that is something that I can't quite understand doing at this point in time. There are at least 3 free word processing and publishing software that you can use that are totally free. Usually open. 2 of the 3 are open source and work on multiple platforms.
Well, let's talk about the pros and cons of different word processors.
Well, okay, so there's you can break word processors down into 2 different types at the top level. You can break them down into what you see is what you get types, and you can break them down into basically markup types. And the what you see is what you get types are like Microsoft Word or LibreOffice. Those are the ones where what the page will look like when you print it out looks a lot like what you have on the screen. And then the other type is stuff like LaTeX, where you need to learn a little bit of a markup language, but you also have a little bit more customizability without having to learn some esoteric UI. These are both valid choices. LaTeX is extremely useful, used primarily for scientific writing these days, but it's a good system because all of your files are simple text files, and there's a lot of cool plugins for like dealing with a bibliography, which is important in scientific writing.
Yeah, and if anyone is like me and they searched for well over a decade now for a decent word processor on Android or well, I suppose Apple has their in-house one, which is okay, but like Android's only real word processor is Google Docs, which is I admit that I wrote half of the good guy in that, but I wouldn't
Google
recommend
Docs works
it.
too. It's also free. It's cloud based, which is has its advantages and disadvantages.
So I put it on the bottom of the list of what I look at as the big 4 word processors. The big 4 are Microsoft Word, LibreOffice, OpenOffice, and Google Docs. Now, I'm sure there's some out there that I've just never used that maybe people think are great, but this is just going off of my experience. Let's weigh the pros and cons just real quickly between these 4.
Sure,
so obviously, LibreOffice and OpenOffice about the same. The difference is
so
LibreOffice is
OpenOffice has been not updated for like 7 years or more. So it's legacy at this point. It doesn't handle It doesn't handle the newer Word and Microsoft Office files, and so unless you are really really attached to the peculiarities of the UI in OpenOffice, LibreOffice is basically the same experience.
Yeah, I've been slowly migrating back over to LibreOffice because I got tired of reformatting things every time I tried to copy text to make a finished product.
Right.
Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that there are pretty extensive UI customization capabilities in both LibreOffice and OpenOffice. And so with a little bit of time and a little bit of Google searching, you can usually figure out how to make LibreOffice look more like the way you want it to. I spent a little time doing that a couple weeks ago because I switched over to LibreOffice on my Linux machine, and I didn't like the default settings for the UI. So I changed some of the bars around. I changed some of the icon systems around. I downloaded some icon sets that looked better. Used those instead. There's a lot of different things that you can tweak in those, and because they're open source, there's a lot more of a ability for people to figure out how to switch this thing and fix that thing. Like for instance, it's the stupidest thing, but there's a little like hourglass icon that shows up in between slides in the LibreOffice version of PowerPoint. LibreOffice Present or something like that, I think. It's called? Or Impress. It's called Impress. And like between frames, there would always be this little hourglass icon that showed up, and it's very distracting. And so it turns out that the way to fix that is to find the proper zip file in the installed data files and replace the little hourglass icon with a transparent bitmap of the same size.
Yeah, this is beyond the scope of what I know because I just use the word processors and sometimes the spreadsheets. So yeah, nothing there, no information there for me. But
well, I mean, those aren't for simple book writing. But if you're creating a presentation or some kind of
if you're, say, a scientist,
multimedia something or other, you might want to use that. But I mean, LibreOffice is pretty good these days. It handles the Microsoft formats pretty well for compatibility. And if you have trouble with that, you can always throw it up into Google Docs and then bring it back down as something less proprietary.
LibreOffice is my top recommendation out of all of them. My next one, much as I hate to say it, would have to be Microsoft Word, just because Microsoft Word used to be really good. I think around 2003 was when they decided that they were just going to turn it into bloated software and have a team that's like the Microsoft Word team that is continually going to be doing things to Microsoft Word to make it worse and worse and worse. Like, that's what they were paid for, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's got a few advantages. Like, I don't know if there is any way to do a LibreOffice cloud thing unless you set up your own personal cloud server between your machines. But like Microsoft Word, of course, connects to OneDrive.
Yeah.
And
which is another problem.
It is a problem, but there are conveniences with if you're working on something in Microsoft Word and you're having it automatically saved to OneDrive. Of course, I recommend, if you do that, whenever you're done writing, also save a local copy. But you can just straight up type in Word, close the program, and you don't even have to save. It will be on OneDrive, and then you can take a trip somewhere, open up your laptop, and that same file will be there ready to access as long as you have internet access. And you can pick up working right from there, which is very convenient. And as
long as you have internet access, ...
Yeah. I mean, there are ways to mitigate that. Like, if you feel like there's any chance of losing internet access, the fortunate thing is that if you do, you're not losing anything you were working on because it saves regularly, like really regularly. So you're not.
Yeah, sure.
You're not in danger of losing too much if you lose your
I just
connection.
think it's funny that it kind of like prohibits you from having like a writer's retreat without electronic devices.
Yeah, I mean,
or without connectivity.
Again, if you've got your own personal network set up, you can use OneDrive in that way too. But
this is more complicated than it's worth, probably.
Yeah,
I mean, text files. Yeah.
Maybe.
Almost certainly.
It just depends on how people like to work. Maybe there's people who really, really, really can't sit at one machine for very long and do something, and they like to move to another
location. Switch over to a tablet?
Well, no, not well. Okay, so that's another thing. Microsoft Word is one of the only really good ways to do tablet book writing. But we'll get into the other things that people use that I'm not against, but I don't understand why people use them. But I just wanted to point out that by and large, writing in Microsoft Word, if you're planning on using the cloud to assist you, is probably superior to Google Docs. Google Docs isn't bad for what it is, but there's one glaring problem I have with Google Docs. And that's the fact that even if you create a document in offline mode, Google does not like to let you work on your documents unless you have an internet connection, even if you've saved it as an offline document.
Yes.
So it's not very helpful there. It's why I don't recommend using Google Docs at all anymore for writing. I believe at the time when I was doing it, you could actually save a local copy and work on it without a connection, but they didn't really support Google Docs very long, and now it's just a thing that's there, and they kind of just have it on the wayside.
Yeah,
it's just their way to be able to say, yeah, we've got tools for you if you get our phones or whatever, and they're reasonable tools. This whole thing about having to be connected to the internet to work on writing is silly to me, and
yeah, it's a little bit pernicious.
Yeah, I don't understand why anyone would want to risk not being able to access their own work when especially if you're trying to do it for some kind of livelihood.
The fact of the matter is that storage is so cheap that unless your workflow involves you changing devices multiple times, the cloud doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Any text, you can be the fastest writer, and you can include pictures on every page, and you still won't run through a significant amount of hard drive space in a lifetime of writing at this point.
Yeah, the only convenience that the cloud really offers is that ability to jump from device to device, but you, with minimal effort, like this doesn't take long to learn how to do this. With minimal effort, you can set up your own personal hub that acts as a sort of cloud server for yourself. And,
yeah,
I mean
they
sell hard
beyond
drives.
the scope of writing, but yes.
Well, they sell hard drives at Best Buy that are meant for personal cloud computing, and you can set up any hard drive really to be that kind of thing. Like you can set up a personal network.
You need to have a computer that can access the network in order to do that. But yes.
Yeah. So if you're bent on using multiple devices in your own home, you can have your own personal home computer, cloud computer. If you like to travel and you are inexplicably too lazy to save things locally and throw them on a USB stick or, transfer
Well, the
them.
USB stick has its problems. Like I've actually broken a USB stick by plugging it in at the same time that I felt like a static shock from my finger to it. It just fried the thing, turned it into garbage.
Well, I mean, you don't take your main copy onto a USB stick. You save a copy and then you copy that to the USB stick.
Well, I know that. I mean, like, yes, but like, if you have a USB stick and you are standing on a carpet and you plug it in, there is a finite but non-zero chance that you will accidentally destroy the USB stick.
That's true. But the same could be said of, acts of nature taking out your PC.
Well, those are even rarer.
Yeah, so we're getting like
we're getting too far afield.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a level of risk whenever you're using digital media, and I think most of those aren't too hard to mitigate.
No, I'm not saying that they're a big deal. I'm just saying that this is a strange problem that can happen if you're constantly fumbling with a USB stick.
Yeah, but this is what I mean when I say that there are people that prefer to use the cloud for things. It's just, make sure you got yourself covered, make sure you're not going to lose your work, and make sure you can access your work.
Yeah, if you want to use the cloud, that's fine. It's just that, the only utility I can see for it is if you want to write on multiple devices, which some people might want to do. So, there it is.
Yeah, so that's like the big four. And I should mention, Corel WordPerfect I used to use a lot back in the day, and back in like the late 90s and early 2000s, I thought it was way better than Microsoft Word, and that was when Microsoft Word was good.
Yeah.
I think I tried using it like 7 years ago, and it didn't feel very polished anymore. And it was the most updated version at the time. I have no idea if it's even still around actually, and if it's any good. But it might be something to check out if it's,
I mean, the thing is that a lot of these options cost money, and you really shouldn't be spending money on a word processor unless you really want to.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to get into next.
Okay, so there are cases where if you're doing like an illustrated book, you might need to spend money on a word processor there. But if you're just making something with like Kindle Create or something like that for a text story, then your money is better spent elsewhere, like on your cover or on advertising or something like that.
Yeah, and to be fair, these word processors we're talking about, most of them aren't super expensive to where it would be taking away from your ability to buy a cover. But like, think about how silly it is think about the things that you can subscribe to for $6.99 a month, and then think about what you can do with Microsoft Word.
Think about it this way: if you're paying $6 a month, and it takes you 6 months to write a novel, hypothetically, you need that cover. That's an additional $30 that you can put toward your cover, or toward advertising, or toward that's not negligible. So
it's not. It's just that the world is trying to move everyone to the subscription model. So like the pricing gets really weird, and I think Microsoft tries to justify the price point of using a word processor by saying, yeah, but we're constantly updating it and doing this and doing that. And it's like,
it's a word processor.
Yeah, it's a word processor. It might need updates here and there to keep up with the modern level of technology, but it does not need massive updates. Like this isn't, we don't need first day DLC for a AAA game.
This is one of those things that software engineers like to do, is they like to play around with the UI and mess with people's workflows. And this is the reason that I use Arch Linux and not Ubuntu. and GNOME. The purpose of software is to be useful in a long-term sense for the user, not to be a place for the software engineer to fiddle around with things and take away options that the person had before. But that's a different story.
One of the things I noticed recently is a lot of times I'll have software and I'll have a problem with it. And so I'll try to look up, something that you used to be able to do relatively easily was look up information for certain pieces of software. And there would be entire forums of people who are just like, yeah, here's the answer. This is the answer. Here's what you do. And now it's like, oh, okay, I found the answer. And then you look at your interface and you look at the answer they gave and you're like, I have no idea which version they're using and it doesn't correlate.
Yeah.
Like this happened to me yesterday.
This answer was posted 6 months ago and it's already out of date. Why?
Like just yesterday I was looking for something and it was like, oh yeah, go into view and then go into settings. And so I open up view and I'm like, there's no settings in here. What are you talking about? But yeah, so it's, we're still relatively safe word processor wise on computers because we have OpenOffice and LibreOffice. And, if worse comes to worse, Microsoft Word is not a bad option. They just need to quit screwing with it and quit charging people like, MMO subscription prices for a word processor.
Right.
But then we get into tablets and phones, and I really feel that the world is well beyond the point that we should be able to pull something out of our pocket with like a physical keyboard and type up an entire book on a phone, which I could do 7 years ago on my BlackBerry Passport.
Yep.
But like nobody makes good word processors for Android. And for Apple, I think the only thing that comes close is the built-in word processor that comes with their tablets. I don't know if it's on their phones, but they have one on their tablets. I can't remember what it's called. I tried it out. It was reasonable. I did not check to see if it was offline and online or if it was like Google Docs where it's all online. I know Apple tries to push the cloud on you too, just like Microsoft and Google. But there are Android options. Most of them work in markup language, which can be both good and bad. I mean, as someone who just writes fiction, that's bad for me because it changes my workflow too much to do italics in markup language. I feel like I'm making an HTML web page instead of writing my story.
Yeah.
There's not really any good what you see is what you get word processors outside of paying the Microsoft subscription price. And then you have to make sure that your device is good enough to run Word because for some reason Word is a resource hog on tablets, which it's a word processor. This is the problem, Microsoft. You have made a word processor that I need a graphics card for. Why?
I literally had a computer that had an amber monitor in the 1990s. In the 1980s. It was the late 80s, actually. And it had, like a 200 megabyte hard drive and 2 floppy disk drives for 5.25 inch floppies. And it had WordPerfect on it. And WordPerfect worked.
64K, Commodore 64. Print shop. The print shop could do text and images. So these markup language programs, a lot of them are either if you're gonna go markup, just go LaTeX. Well, LaTeX isn't available on Android.
LaTeX is available on everything.
I could not find a version of LaTeX that I could get to run on Android. Like there were like unofficial ones that I found that were made for Android. Am I wrong in this? Because I looked. Was it just hard to find, or should I not have been looking on the Play Store? That might have been my problem.
It probably was it probably was the fact that you were looking on the Play Store. I mean, I guess I don't know for sure because I've never tried, but I mean, LaTeX works with plain text, so you can write plain text on your Android phone, and then all you have to do is put it somewhere where LaTeX is and run the LaTeX program, which takes 3 seconds.
Well, yeah, but like, okay, so now we're already getting to the point though where we're talking about someone who just wants to sit down and write a novel, and now they have to figure out how to sideload an APK onto Android to use LaTeX. No,
that's fair enough.
So that's kind of what, if we're talking about what tools a writer really needs, then we're probably already pushing the bounds there. Like we're kind of trying to digest that thought. What tools do you really need? And,
Right.
We've kind of already given our answer to that. I think that a computer or laptop, or even, I don't know if you can get OpenOffice on a Chromebook. I think you can. Or LibreOffice, I mean.
Probably.
I'm pretty sure you can get LibreOffice on a Chromebook. But like on a cheap computer or tablet, you can get LibreOffice. It's a free download.
Yeah. You can get a $200 refurbished business laptop and put all that stuff on it.
Yeah, I've got a $100 refurbished HP notebook that you can do all of that stuff with. I put Linux Mint on it, and it came with, it comes pre-installed with LibreOffice.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that hard to get a word processor running on a computer these days. In a pinch, if you absolutely need to, I know that Microsoft Word is basically on everything. So even on Chromebook, you can get Microsoft Word. Again, resource hog, though. It's not going to run as well as a very small file size and low resource using version of LibreOffice.
True, yeah.
There are other options that I hear a lot of writers talking about and using. For the most part, I actually do hear most writers say that they use either Word or LibreOffice. A lot of people use Scrivener. Now, I looked into Scrivener several times over the past few years. I never saw anything that really enticed me to use it. Like I think when it started, Scrivener was something that you could purchase and it would be your software. And the last time I checked, it's a subscription fee to use all the features of Scrivener. And if you're not using all the features, you're way better off using Word or LibreOffice.
Right.
Or even Google Docs. But I looked at the features that you get with Scrivener, and like every single one, I was ticking off in my head like, I have no use for this. I have no use for this.
Give us some examples.
All right, so one example I can give you, which sounds good on its face,
Sure.
is you make these chapter headings, and they make they make like this plotting board for you. So like, you write a part of a story under this chapter heading or this section heading, whatever it is. It's like a section that's cut out of the story. It exists in its own sphere.
Okay.
And you have this, basically a cork board. And if you decide that would be better in an earlier part of your story, you can grab that entire heading and it'll pull every chunk that's under that heading to wherever you move it on this board. Okay. Maybe some people work like that. I'm willing to bet there's plenty of people out there that
sure.
do work
I
like
mean,
that.
For editing purposes, you might decide to, or like for some fast and loose editing, you might decide, hey, I think this part of the story goes better here, which makes some sense. But I mean, like, the way that I'm currently working is that each chapter is just a separate file, and I can just like say, oh, I'm going to change chapter 13 to chapter 12, and chapter 12 to chapter 13, or something like that.
So that's an easy fix right there that you don't even need to spend money on it. But like, I'm thinking in terms of how I write, and I have everything that I write in one file. Right. And I just write straight through, and I have never had a need to grab a chunk of my text and move it to a different part of the story because my workflow is start to finish. So I'm looking at that like maybe that's the tool that people really like to use.
It seems like kind of an edge case, but okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other examples?
There were other examples. For the life of me, I can't remember them because we're seat of the pants on this one again. So I didn't actually think about this before we got into this. But it was just, I think yesterday I was on my phone at work looking at Scrivener, and I didn't really see anything that I thought would help me. Like, some people need the grammar and spelling tools, I guess, because there are a lot of people that write books these days that rely on those, and they're just like, maybe I'm not a good speller, maybe my grammar isn't the best, but the software will fix it for me, which is something that you can do with both LibreOffice and Microsoft Word. It's built into Word, and it's a download for LibreOffice.
Yeah.
And Scrivener has some of that built in. There's Grammarly now, which a lot of people use. I've never used those tools. I'm a great reader. I'm a great writer. I'm a great speller. I know my grammar. I know where I can and cannot bend and break the rules. And I've been doing it long enough to where I feel like those would mess me up more than they would help me at this point.
Yeah, I feel like they would. I'm kind of in the same boat. I feel like they would mess up the voice of what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, and then you'd be second guessing yourself because you'd be like, well, this is technically the right way, but this isn't. Like if you read enough books, you will see that many authors write things in ways that are not necessarily grammatically correct, but they sound so much better written that way than they would if you wrote them correctly. Like
It's to boldly go where no man has gone before, right?
Well, it's also, it's like the Beavis and Butthead Do America movie where the FBI agent tells the officer not to end his. What does he say? He says,
Often
"You
whose
represent."
camper they were whacking.
Yeah, no, he says, "You represent the United States government. Do not end your sentences in a prepositional statement."
In a preposition, yeah.
So those tools can work, but I feel like if every author on the planet was using those tools and adhering to most of what they said, writing would get very stale really quickly. Oh, by the way, what's one of our biggest complaints about modern writing, off the top of your head, Rudy?
Staleness?
Yeah, I think it's the staleness. So I think there might be something to that.
Okay. Well, maybe we should dig into this a little bit.
I mean, well, we'd have to pull to like 20 or 30 different modern books and have a look at it and like try to digest whether or not Grammarly had an effect on it or not.
Well, we wouldn't know anyway because but like here's the thing, right? Like, if you look at various writers, they have various levels of care that they take for looking at the grammar and syntax of their sentences. Like if you go to like a Hemingway, things are very bare bones. Some of the rules are frequently broken. Sentences are very short. There's not a whole lot of complexity going on. You aren't going to find a lot of semicolons. But on the other hand, if you go to someone like Lovecraft, who we talked about recently, you're going to find long paragraphs. You're going to find complex sentence structure. You're going to find uncommon punctuation. You're going to find uncommon words. You're going to find words used in senses that are not entirely usual, resulting in possible confusion here and there. I mean, the thing about these like Grammarly things, in my opinion, is that they have a style guide and they point you in the direction of that style guide. But style guides are not proscriptive; they're suggestive or even descriptive, right?
Right.
Like you don't want to pull all of your style things from the MLA handbook. You want to use some of the formatting guides of it, but you don't want to necessarily restrict yourself to what they're saying about the Oxford comma. And it's perfectly fine to have your own opinion on those things. If you don't like the Oxford comma, that's fine.
Are we calling out Tom Woods here? Are we calling him out?
I don't think it's Tom Woods. I think it's Scott Horton.
No, I think it's Tom Woods that doesn't like the Oxford comma. I love the Oxford comma, so it's like, of all the things that Tom Woods has spoken of over the years, the one thing I find that I really disagree with him on is the Oxford comma.
I've never heard him diss the Oxford comma. I've heard Scott Horton diss the Oxford comma.
Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. I could have sworn it was on one of Tom Woods' episodes. But anyway.
The Tom Woods' problem is that he pronounces it coupon.
Yeah. Okay, I do that too, so. I do it both ways. I'm actually... So I'll usually say it coupon, but then when I'm thinking about it, I'll say it coupon, and it's just, there's a lot of words I do that with.
Sure.
Just completely interchangeably, just like if I happen to be paying attention to the way I'm talking, I'll say it.
It depends on the flow of the sentence.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, but back to word processors like Scrivener. Now, so I'm going to give some bad advice. I'm going to give some really bad advice here.
Go for it.
My bad advice is this. Now, we're living in a time in which many people are using these tools. Many people are out there, like they're using Grammarly, they're relying on spell check, and they're still making money doing this. They're still getting publishing deals. They're still able to get a following and things like that. So this is why this is bad advice, because what they're doing is actually working, even if I think it hurts the quality of their writing. And I think that that a lot of the reason why writing seems so butchered and mundane these days compared to even 30 years ago is directly a result of this. But my bad advice is this. If your goal is to be a writer, and it's something that you want to be good at, you want to be respected for, and you want to be able to do as a career, I feel like you should know the technique, and you should have a grasp of how to write. And so if you're just relying on things like Grammarly, I only see a very, very small difference between someone telling an AI to write 7 pages for them based on a prompt, and someone who actually comes up with, the story and everything themselves, but they let a machine handle all of the grammar problems. Like I would prefer to read the work of the person. Well, I might prefer to read the work of the person that came up with their own idea. Those AI prompts are sometimes hilarious.
Yeah, yeah.
But, my point is, it's like, how much do you want the machine to be writing for you? And because writing isn't just like coming up with the idea and then, here's my idea. Now the machine make it sound good. Part of writing is saying, I have an idea. How can I make it sound interesting to a reader? It's not just giving the idea to the reader. It's also, how can I make the reader interested in the idea?
Yeah, there can be issues with like structure that don't work well with like the most proper like small scale structure. You sometimes need to write dialogue in dialect. You sometimes need to have characters use slang or make a mistake. You sometimes need to have uncertainty in what's going on in your writing. You sometimes need to make things sound frantic. You sometimes need to make things sound, distressed or, painful. And the tools are going to push you in the direction of this particular style guide that they use. And that's going to kind of turn a lot of that. It's going to try to turn a lot of that character in your writing into kind of a gray sludge.
Yeah,
so,
and
it's one of those things where if you use it at the very low level, like, oh, do I put a comma here or a semicolon or a colon or what? Is this word supposed to be capitalized? Is this word supposed to be hyphenated? If you use it for like low level stuff like that, it's not too bad. But once you start relying on it for the larger sentence structure, paragraph structure, tone policing, that's when things start to get a little bit rough.
You'll lose your voice. And like you said, sometimes, even if you're not doing dialects for characters, there's people that write in third person where either the author or someone removed is the narrator, and they still use a voice outside of dialogue.
No, of course. Yeah. I mean, like, you can have, if you're doing a third person thing, if you're doing a third person perspective story, you're still going to have like ways that things are described more frequently compared to less frequently. Things like that.
Yeah, and it's this isn't saying that these tools should be thrown away either. So like an example for that is my spell checker is on my LibreOffice when I'm writing. Yeah. And this is both a blessing and a curse because while I can spell particularly well, there's a lot of times where you're typing, you're not necessarily going to spell your words correctly simply because you miss a keystroke. And the software has a nice red underline that shows you where anything that might be misspelled is. So you can quickly scan and say, okay, is that just a word? Or in my case, is that one of the names I gave the characters that isn't a real name that anyone ever uses, and so it's going to show up in the spell checker.
Right.
Which is the curse part of that. But I mean, if you're editing your work, that's not part of the creative process. That's part of the I've got mistakes I need to be on the lookout for. And so that is a perfectly legitimate use for spell check because it's like, oh, I typed the wrong there, or I typed he and I meant to type she. I missed the S.
Yeah.
Little things like that.
Spell check won't help you find that.
But, well, yeah, not that one actually. That was a problem I had with the good guy. Is I had like 3 or 4 of those in there where I mistyped a he or a she. Uh-huh. But yeah, actually, they won't help you with there either. Now that I think about it, but you know what I mean. It's like you.
No, they will help you with there. Sometimes they generally have enough grammar understanding that they'll flag that. They usually won't flag it with the red underline, but they'll give it like a blue underline.
That's the thing I was going to say next. Is the grammar checkers will often catch those mistakes, and so there's it's not like those grammar checkers.
So on your default settings, those things are both on by default. Generally speaking, if you're just going to write, then you can just leave them on and take everything that they say as suggestions with a bit of a grain of salt. There are some issues where like I had some weird looking abbreviations, and I had to turn off the auto correction, like correct while you type. I had to turn that off because I couldn't. Yeah, I always turn that off because
I always turn autocorrect off because there's so many times I'll type something and then it'll fix it and I won't notice it and I'll be like, wait.
Right. So you may want to turn that tool off, especially if you're writing something that has particularly strange words in it, weird hyphenations or things like that. I mean, these are. I feel like we're spending too much time on tools for writers that I think everybody is going to know.
This is kind of, maybe. I mean, it's always good to have a fresh perspective because there could be someone who completely disagrees with everything we said, but then there's like one thing in there they're like, actually, that's a good idea. That's why we do this. This is not an entire episode on no, don't do this and you shouldn't do this. This is just like we are two people. We are two people who write. We've done this before. Yeah. There's other people who like to think about these things and like to determine what works best for them. And also, by having multiple perspectives and having other people's 2 cents on the subject, you might get a better idea of how you want to do things. So take it with
so if you're listening to this on Spotify, every episode has a little like a question that you can answer. If you're listening to this and you have some serious ideas about stuff that we're getting wrong, hop in there and post something, because that would be really cool to look at, to see, I use Scrivener because X, and the subscription fee is not too much because Y.
Yeah. Keep in mind, I don't actually use Scrivener, so it could maybe it's something that I should be using, and I would love if I did. I've considered trying it several times. I just I didn't want to pay the subbrand fee for a word processor.
I wonder if it has a free trial period.
It does.
Now we're getting way out of way afield.
No, it's fine. We're again, seat of our pants. No, this is how you and I have always done things like this. No matter if we were doing movie reviews or anything, that's what we always do. So we're always going to have these tangents like this. But getting back to the main point, I brought up the spell check part and I brought up the grammar check part and talking about how they can be useful as tools, because the question we're gnawing away at is, what are the basic tools? What do you absolutely need as a writer? And in the modern era, if your intention is to create a digital book, mostly talking about fiction here, then if you have, I feel like if you have LibreOffice on a PC and you have a spell check and grammar check into it that you can leave on to give you the little underlines to tell you where there might be problems with your writing. That last part is unnecessary, but it's such a useful tool when it gets to the editing stage that I would go ahead and say that it is a great tool for writers. I would say bare bones, that would probably be the best thing to have, unless you really, really, really want to be the living in the cabin, writing in my journal with a pen and paper type of person.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, generally speaking, you want to have the option of some kind of mobile workspace, because sitting at the same place writing constantly is something that a lot of people can't do for very long. But what you can do is you have a laptop and you can change scene every half hour, every hour. You can maintain a better pace that way by having a little 5-minute break, switching to a different location. And in that case, you want to have some kind of portable computer, a laptop or a tablet.
Yeah, actually, I have thoughts on that too. I have spent most of my time writing sitting at my desk and typing. I bought a really good keyboard with really good key layout and nice wide spacing so that I could type even faster.
Yeah.
It's the keyboard that you're always complaining about is too loud when we record things that involve me typing. But
complaining is not exactly the right word, but it is definitely noticeable.
Yeah, well, on the few occasions,
it is the loudest keyboard. It is the loudest keyboard this side of the sun.
It's just worth noting that after years of sitting at a desk and writing, my preference is actually to take my laptop, and if I feel like sitting down somewhere, I sit down somewhere with my laptop, and then I've got this table in the basement that has bar stools, so it's a taller table. Sometimes I'll bring my laptop down there and I'll stand at that table and type. And even though the keyboard on my laptop is pretty much garbage, I mean, you can always get an external keyboard even for a laptop. But I mean, I just type right on the laptop. It's nice to be able to move from one setting to the next. Like I can sit on the couch with where I have a footrest and just lean back and type, or I can stand up at a table, or sitting at a bar stool is actually pretty comfortable to type
Well,
at.
I mean, so there's this issue too, is that a lot of people have those, or a lot of people want those desks that you can change from standing to sitting.
Yeah, those are nice.
And those are good for changing your posture and position and avoiding that kind of fatigue. But you can get the same effect by simply taking a laptop, sitting at the desk with the computer for a little while, and then taking the laptop to a table that stands higher up. You could be in your kitchen or something like that, and you can stand there for a little while. If you're on a budget, this is one of those things where we don't make a lot of money from writing, and so therefore,
People
saving
can make money
saving
from
every
writing?
right, saving every penny is important, and so there are a lot of workarounds that you can do that don't involve spending as much money. And those hydraulic desks are pretty expensive and pretty bulky too, so there are ways to get around that as well without spending the money on them. You're going to need to spend the money on the basic tools. You're going to need bare minimum. You're going to need a laptop and that's about it. Honestly, you can get by with basically just a cheap laptop these days.
Yeah, you get a cheap laptop writing, and you've already got pretty much everything you need to be able to...
I mean, this is one of those things where I discovered the refurbished laptop market, or the refurbished PC market, about 10 years ago, and it has been an incredible money saver for me. I bought a Windows XP machine for $200. It came with a monitor, and I used that thing until XP, was no longer supported by Microsoft. Then I went and I bought a Windows 7 machine that was a refurbished Office machine. It was cheap enough that I could, it was probably $300 or something like that, maybe even a little less than that. And it was just plug and play, throw it up there. You got Windows 7 Professional on there, and I used it for gaming as well. And so what I did was I found one that had a couple extra RAM slots. I found one that was in a tower format setup so that I could throw a video card in there, and that worked. That served me fine until Windows 7 no longer was supported.
Yeah.
Then I switched over to Windows 10, and for that one I had my solid job back then, so I actually splurged a little bit on a machine that I built myself. But recently I bought a laptop, and I bought a refurbished laptop for that one. I spent a little extra on too, for one with a nice monitor and a slightly larger keyboard. But again, a couple $100, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and I mean, if your biggest goal is to write, then there's no reason to really go all out on things. I mean,
right.
I have only recently in the past couple of years decided to do things that cost me excessive amounts of money.
Yeah.
I built myself a really nice computer, which I almost feel bad when I sit at my laptop to write instead of my computer at this point, just because I bought this nice keyboard, I got this nice setup, but I use it for other stuff.
It's a USB keyboard, right?
Yeah. It
can attach to the laptop. That's just fine.
It's a big and bulky one. There's no reason for me to pull it out when I'm writing. Typing is not that difficult, and I don't need to be able to type 116 words a minute. 90 is fine.
Yeah.
These computers that, even if you're not getting a refurbished computer, I can go to Best Buy right now and buy a laptop that will be good enough to write on for $200. They've gotten really cheap. It's a text file.
I haven't been to a Best Buy in a long time. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's $200, $300 computers. There's I think the cheapest I saw there recently was Chromebook. There's still Chromebooks for $150, and this is after the past 4 years of inflation.
Yeah.
You can get relatively good computers that'll let you do writing and a bunch of probably if you want to do book cover work or something, $400 for a laptop that'll let you do that kind of work. You won't be able to do massive 4K graphic design style stuff, but you could definitely crank out a book cover. I mean, I had a tablet that was, it's when did I even get it? 2016, I think, and it's still a good enough tablet that I could draw a book cover on it that would be serviceable.
I mean, here's the thing:
Amazon.
once you actually have the software on the thing, as long as you don't try to upgrade to a version that your thing doesn't support, you're gonna still be able to use it.
Yeah, yeah, and even if you do, we've already gone over how there's multiple options. I mean,
Yeah.
as long as you can get an internet connection, if you're really in dire straits, go ahead and use Google Docs. I'm not like I'm against it on principle. I'm not against it on utility. Google Docs has come in handy for me on several occasions.
Well, I mean, I just started a new work in progress on Google Docs just to try it out and see how I like it. And it's not too bad.
It was really good for the good guy back when I was writing it, until I got
Yeah.
about 3/4 of the way through, and then every time I turned it on, it took forever to load the story, and it was kind of slow when I was typing, so I couldn't keep an eye on what I was typing all the time.
Yeah, this is why I separate things into separate files at this point, because Google Docs is slow if you have a large file, and the good guy is a large file.
Yeah, yes, it is. I just did a test. A couple of new hardcover copies came in today, and I was curious, so I picked it up, and I found like the last chapter is basically a couple pages of epilogue, but the chapter before that is that really long one.
Yeah.
I picked it up and I opened to the second to last chapter, and I basically grabbed that and the last page, and I held it between thumb and forefinger. It's almost a third of the book.
Yeah. Well, you can always separate a single chapter into multiple files if you need to, but
yeah. No, that's. I was thinking of that because someone else on Twitter that I saw earlier was.
I mean, this is one of those things. This is probably the biggest problem with Google Docs, is that it's so damned slow. A word processing program should not have a problem with a full-length novel single file.
No, it really shouldn't. It's text file.
A cloud-based thing. Well, it has additional formatting information. It's not quite a text file, but
yeah.
A properly designed program will only keep in current memory. I mean, it's a text file. You should be able to keep the whole darn thing in RAM.
Yeah.
But as things bloat, somehow this text file is now megs and megs and megs, and it's just it's only a megabyte worth of text, but for some reason the file is 5 megabytes, and for some reason the software doesn't know how to handle that.
Yeah, it's interesting just how technology has progressed, where we've got it reminds me of back in the day when I was playing like Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis, and I was like, wow, in the future we're going to have hardware that's so powerful and the ability to store so much information that they're going to be able to make these Sonic the Hedgehog levels like there'll be 1,000 of these levels in one game. And what really happened was that they started making games in 3D, and they actually had less levels in them per game.
And worse ones.
Yeah. But it came full circle, because they had that Sonic Mania game a while back where they had a ton of levels in it, and they were all throwback retro 2D levels, and it really kind of demonstrated exactly what I had always hoped for when I was a kid. This has happened with a lot of technology, word processors included, where it's just like, we're dealing with text files. Yeah, but there's all these cool things you can do, and then you can make your interface all fancy, and it's like, okay, and it's like, yeah, you can put all these tools in it. It's like, okay. There's so many tools in my word processors that I have just never used and never will use.
I would say that it's worth spending a little time learning how to customize the interface and customizing the interface for yourself.
Yeah.
Because the default settings on those are sometimes not quite what you want. Just to give you a concrete example, the original in LibreOffice, the default icon toolbars are very long, and so if you try to bring the window down to the size of the page, you're cutting off most of your buttons. So what I did is I created additional toolbars and arranged them above and below the original one, and took the extra buttons from that one and put it on those. And so now I have 2 little rows of buttons on the bottom of the word processing window, but now I can fit 2 documents on the screen at the same time, and that way I can have a document where I'm putting in suggestions for things that I want to add to the story, and then have the story on the other side of the monitor, basically.
Yeah.
There are things you can do like that will improve your workflow a little bit. Because the last thing you want to do is be like clicking and holding on a button to like figure out, okay, I gotta click and hold here. There it is. Drop down menu. Go over here. Do this. You want to try to avoid that with your interface. And so if you're gonna try to have the window size down to something as narrow as the page, you're gonna want to adjust that. And it doesn't take very long to figure out how to do that, and doesn't take very long to actually do it either. I think I spent 20 minutes on it or something like that, maybe a half an hour. And I got everything just the way I like it, and now it's that way, as long as I leave it that way. It's just nice to have, it's just streamline your workspace. Whatever your workspace is, streamline it as much as you can, because the more streamlined it is, the more comfortable you'll be there for long periods of time working on things.
But also don't overthink it, because if you've spent a whole day getting yourself set up to write, you've wasted a whole day where you could have been writing, and we all know that's more fun.
Yeah, true.
I guess to end on a funny note, I was going to bring it up a minute ago. Someone on Twitter had talked about what length chapters should be, and I was like, oh, this might be an interesting conversation. Then I looked and they're like, mine are about 2 to 3K, and I'm like, and then I realized that, I've read a lot of books where the chapter structure will be like chapter 1, and it's like this one brief thing happening, and then chapter 2, and it'll be a book with like 45 chapters, because in my head for just a minute I was like, wait a minute, 2 to 3K is like, I mean, I could make that a Twitter thread.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not good at writing short stories under 6K. I have very few short stories that I was able to do in 3,000 words. And I don't think I have any chapters in any of my books that are less than 5K. 3,000 words is... there's nothing wrong with writing 3,000 words. God knows I have no objection to people putting whatever length chapter they want in. I think you can vouch for me here. But...
well, I mean, the purpose of chapter structures in a book is to isolate parts of the story from each other.
Yeah.
That are not... I mean, like... If you're aiming for a particular length of chapter, you're probably overthinking it.
I think so too, yeah. But there's also, I think a lot of people like to feel that, I think where that comes from is like a couple of those novels I have where it is divided up that way. It really does feel like as I'm reading, these parts go together so well that there's no reason that there was a chapter number inserted between them.
Sure.
But it also doesn't hurt it that there's a chapter number between them. So I like you said, I don't think this really matters that much. You don't have to have the same length chapter for every single chapter in your book. If you really, really want to and you're really OCD about it, I don't think it'll hurt you. It might if you're not careful about where your placement is. But
so in my current work in progress, my chapters range from, I think, 2,000 to 6,000 words.
Yeah.
And they're typically separated by some kind of jump in time in the story. The characters do these things, and then there's a natural jumping point to something that happens a few hours later. Or I'm changing perspectives. I'm with these characters at one moment, and then I want to move over to these other characters, so I create a new chapter, and I do a chapter with these other characters. Then I do a new chapter and come back to the original set, something like that.
I was largely influenced by the way Terry Pratchett did it, where even if he had a book with chapters in it, his chapters would be longer, but they would be broken up by scene jumps. And so my chapters will have paragraph, etc., until I get to the end of one part, and then I'll separate them with some asterisks.
Yeah, and the standard is 3 asterisks separated by tabs or something like that.
And the reason that it
looks nice.
Yeah, the reason that I don't break them up into chapters is because sometimes, and again, a lot of this was influenced by Terry Pratchett, but sometimes I will have a moment where it's like, all right, I'm jumping to another character who's going to have like 1 or 2 paragraphs where I describe something so that I can, set the stage for the next scene that's going to unfold. Like jumping to a villain and
probably you want to set a minimum limit for a chapter length, and then if it's shorter than that, do something else.
Or just you don't want like 2 paragraphs as a chapter. That might be
right.
I mean, some people.
I think the limit is something like 500 to 1,000 words. If it's shorter than that, then it probably should be mixed in with another chapter with maybe a separation or something like that.
But that's not to say there aren't things you can do with that. Like you can have a chapter that's like chapter 5, and then like you could have like something silly that's basically a joke about what happened in the last chapter, and like kind of just making the author laugh at how short it was for a chapter, or the reader laugh at how short it was for a chapter, and then go into the next chapter. You could probably do several different things that would make a very short chapter entertaining to read, but not recommended as a part of the normal process.
That's a gimmick, and gimmicks are fine. Doing fun things makes your writing more fun to read. And you just have to be... You don't want to get so quirky that the reader gets irritated or finds it obnoxious. Yeah.
Unless that's your goal, then then
I
don't understand what you're doing.
The reader should never find you obnoxious. The reader can find some things that happen in the book to be obnoxious, but that obnoxiousness should be tempered by your voice as the author. Because if you're being obnoxious, no one will want to finish your book.
Yeah, I mean, you can go the Disney route if you so choose. I would not recommend it.
I don't recommend it. Yeah.
We'll have to talk about that one day.
I'll put it in the list.
I mean, maybe. I don't know how much more I can handle talking about how bad the writing is coming out of Hollywood.
I haven't seen much of it. I've only seen it by proxy.
It's not worth it.
I refuse to give Disney money at this point.
Yeah, no, don't do that. Just don't. It's,
I think I gave Disney a few bucks like last year because I bought KOTOR 1 and 2 on for PC.
You know what? I'm not going to tell anyone that if there's a really good game out there that some crappy company makes that they shouldn't buy it. So that's fine. But like I see nothing in their new movies. There's nothing of substance coming out there. There's nothing that one can endear oneself to, and I'm looking forward to the utter collapse of Hollywood and whatever comes next to fill in that vacuum.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a topic for another episode, I guess.
Yeah. So we'll leave you on that that depressing note.
On that depressing note. But yeah, I mean, seriously,
we're all in on nihilism. Let's go.
They don't believe in anything. No. The last point I want to leave you with, dear listener, is feel free to throw a comment on the video on YouTube, or throw like a comment on the podcast episode. We're small enough that we can kind of look at those and learn stuff from them. So, suggestions, thoughts, angry letters, it's all stuff that we could probably use to do better podcasts for you guys.
Yeah, and you can verbally attack me. I'm very thick-skinned. I don't care. I will just treat it as someone who took the time to listen.
I'm not thick-skinned. Don't say anything bad about me. I'll cry.
You're an absolute liar. You know that?
I'm the best liar.
that may be the case. After that one, I'd say so, yeah. You utter scumbag. He's unbeknownst to me, he goes to bed and cries.
As long as nobody sees it or hears it, it didn't happen.
As long as they cannot see, the skin is still thick.
All right. Well, Wordy Pair Podcast, episode number.
We're not numbering them anymore because you decided that you wanted to be able to like mix and match them, so it doesn't matter. It's a free for all.
I could add an intro or or an outro with just me saying here's episode blah. But realistically, these episodes are relatively evergreen, and the topic is in the title. So if the topic is interesting, go read, go listen to that one. And if you want to skip it. But listen to our podcasts.
Yeah, and don't. It's just a heads up. At some point, if you're listening to something, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was like that thing we talked about on the last episode. That's going to just be me totally forgetting that we're not doing these necessarily in order anymore.
Oh yeah, no,
I'm going to do that all the time.
I'm probably going to try to that was our episode, blah, 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 and put a link in the description of the podcast. But I may also fail at that. Who knows? In any case,
it doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter. No. I mean, we actually had some pretty good listenership in the last couple episodes. So
the Pippi one got a good amount of listening. I think that might have been because I did a whole Pippi Day thing on Twitter that several people thought was kind of fun. But
it actually hold on a minute. I think it wasn't the Pippi episode.
What was the one I saw that I saw a lot of people looking at? I got curious 2 days ago and I was looking at our list, and no, it wasn't the Dracula one, was it?
Episode rankings. Yeah, our Talking About got 30 views, 30 plays for some reason.
Oh wow.
Pippi is
8, I think.
Pippi is way down there at 5 views.
Oh, only I could have sworn it said 8. You know, YouTube is weird
so
like
I'm
that.
I'm talking about the Spotify.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can't see the Spotify numbers, so that's all on you.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty cool that the Talking About. What was our Talking About again?
It was about our random works and just having fun talking about our fiction.
Oh.
I guess we'll have to do another one of those. Because you suggested that we do that, and I nixed it.
Look, I am willing to do an episode on every single chapter of The Good Guy, because that is how much I loved writing that book. I don't care if nobody ever buys it. I love that book to death. I love the characters I created for it. They are some of the best characters I have in my entire repertoire. I have 1,600 characters that I've written about, and I love most of them. Very few of them that I'm just like, I'll probably never do anything with this character.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will do every single chapter. I have no trouble doing that. I can talk about them for hours and hours, and podcasts, and we've actually already done that, but podcasts and podcasts.
I mean, it's so bad that we considered the possibility of having an April Fool's episode where we say that we're going to change the name of the podcast to Rudy and Justin Talk About the Good Guy.
Yeah, and Ibralina and the Pixie Lands is going to be out soon, and then I'm going to want to talk about that constantly. It's not as good as The Good Guy, in my own personal opinion, but it's written in kind of the same fun way, and those characters were in The Good Guy, most of them. So
Right.
So I will definitely want to do some talking about that when that book comes out.
I mean, of course, we're going to plug your book when it comes out. That's why would we other? What's the point of having a podcast if we don't do at least that?
No, we're so anti-capitalism. Why would we do that?
We're anti-capitalism?
Oh wait, no. We are exactly the opposite of that. Ding, 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 ding. Gimme.
What was he saying? It sounded like a slot machine paying out.
Your eyeballs.
That's
rolled
a Penny
into
Arcade
dollar
reference
signs.
for anyone who.
Oh God!
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Nope.
No,
We're
not done
yet. You got me rolling. I made a joke about the dollar sign eyeball thing. Elishard did that in part of The Good Guy. I just wanted to point that out.
She did. Excellent.
All right, that's enough plugging. That's or whatever it is that I.
It's not. Yeah. It's not nearly enough plugging, but it's enough for right now.
Yeah, Let's figure out what we're going to talk about next time, and let's end this farce that we have started today, and not tell anyone that we weren't ready for this at all and had no plan.
We told them that at the beginning of the episode.
Crap.
And it's not like I can cut that out.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do about this.
There's no solution but to humiliate ourselves by posting this to the internet.
Microsoft Spoken Word has removed that ability from the software that we're using. They don't let us do that anymore. So welcome to 2027.
We are no longer permitted the audacity of editing things.
Oh, let's well hang on a second. Do you have anything you've written?
What you got?
Do you have anything you've written for any of the prompts for Iron Age recently?
I have not. I've been chunking away at my novel.
Okay.
And editing that, which has been actually surprisingly fun. I thought that it was bad, and it's feeling better the more I read through it. And of course, editing is making it better. So that's been enjoyable, albeit a little bit tedious. But I'm making it through that, and hopefully that book will be out soon.
All right. Well, let's start doing.
It might even be out before this is posted, but I doubt that.
Let's start doing something like this from now on, just because it's like, we write, we may as well sometimes talk about it. So like if you ever do any of the prompts after you do them and after they're up,
absolutely.
And the next episode we do, let's just tell people where they can go and read them.
I mean, I do that usually if we mention things at all in the episode anyway.
Yeah, so, but we play it fast and loose, so we may as well just regularly, tell people where.
We can definitely do that more often, sure.
And you can put it in the links. I mean, it's our podcast, like you said. We may as well, show what we can do.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like it would.
Thanks for listening. No, what?
I feel like it would lend an air of legitimacy if, people could actually...
Is that what we're aiming for? Legitimacy?
No, I'm just saying an air of legitimacy. Those are two totally different things.
Is that what we're aiming for? An air of legitimacy? We've been doing this all wrong.
Well, now you've got me second-guessing myself. Don't you ever second-guess me, but
don't
I
second
can
guess yourself.
me. Unless you tell me not to second-guess me, which nobody's going to get this joke but me and you, so why are we doing this?
Inside joke, don't worry about it. All right. Everyone listening, thank you for listening. We are the Wordy Pair. We will be back next week. Have fun and do some good writing and do some good reading. See y'all later.
Thanks for listening to the Wordy Pair Podcast. Our passion is all things writing, world building, and getting into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We hope you enjoyed our unique takes. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to get your weekly dose of writing weirdness. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Twitter. For Rudy, it's @Rudolph_Cone. And for Justin, @Ninja Mouse Chew. See you next time on the Wordy Pair Podcast.